Welcome to a vaguely familiar podcast. My name is Nazar, and with me, my partner in crime and brother and co-host, Bashaar.
It feels really great just to say that one name and not be like, Ahmed Bashaar, blah, blah, blah.
Why'd you have to be dramatic about it?
I don't know. I just had to. But glad to be back here sitting.
Gladly.
This is the broken record section of the podcast. And on
Can I tell you
this,
something really funny? Sorry
What's up?
to cut you off. We started saying that it's the broken record of the podcast, but it's actually the record shop.
oh really? Okay. Wait. So it's the record shop. We're back. It's not a broken record. It's a record shop. You get
The only broken record there was the Coldplay album, which I will stick to.
shots fired. But that's the gist of it. We are here discussing our 2021 Spotify Wrapped. And then before we start to that, I just wanted to say, I feel like Spotify Wrapped has become such an event.
It's a national holiday.
And
It really is.
I feel so bad for my friends who listen to Apple Music or
Rest in
are
peace.
on other streaming platforms, or for the ones that are still downloading their music. Please stop.
People do that still. I mean,
Please
I
stop.
guess back home in Pakistan, people still do that. But, yeah, we're here sitting together, trying to talk about our Spotify Wrapped, because our Spotify Wrapped, it should have just been like a collective wrap. Like it's your Spotify Wrapped and my Spotify Wrapped is so similar
Yeah.
that it's not even funny.
And there's this feature on Spotify where you can make a blended playlist with somebody.
Yeah.
And I made that with you, and a lot of our top songs, like your top songs or my top songs, and I just think that's where we connect the most.
Yeah, this is why we have a podcast together. There's no other way this could
Absolutely.
have happened. But it's amazing that Spotify has features like that where you could actually track your top 5 artists and your top 5 songs. You know what feature I think is missing though? The feature that I think that's missing on Spotify Wrapped is top 5 albums. Like I know that people don't listen to albums like that anymore, but Sour came out last year, and I think a lot of people just like put Sour on track 1, played it all the way through. Sob Rock for me, track 1, played it all the way through. Adele's new album, played it all the way through. Taylor Swift's new albums, the past 3. Like people do that, and I would love to see that traction as well.
I would agree. I think that is something that's missing, like maybe a further breakdown.
Yeah.
What Spotify does tell you is like your top favorite artist and then the top stream song of that artist and how
Yeah.
many times you've streamed that song.
Yeah.
So I would love if they're listening, please add an album feature.
And why wouldn't they be listening? We are Spotify products. We use Anchor, so you better be listening.
Yes.
How close are we from putting a paywall on our on our podcast?
I don't know.
How close are we from having subscription based podcast on Vaguely Familiar?
I'm not sure. I'm not
put
sure.
backward point on a paywall and see what happens.
I really don't know.
Nothing will happen. Interesting though. Do you want to start with yours? Because mine is so easy that you'll be like, because you told me that you don't remember my top 5 artists.
Yeah, and I told you not to remind me because
Yeah.
I mean, I remember skimming through it, but
I don't remember yours at all.
Oh,
I know
really?
you're number 1 because we have that.
I
in
think you have the
common.
same number one.
We have the same number 1.
Respects.
Respect.
Dab me on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, my top favorite artists. I think my top 2 haven't changed since last year.
Yeah.
Last year was John Mayer, it was Coldplay, it was Snow Patrol, it was maybe Enough Jen was up there too. I was listening to a lot of Enough Jen. But this year, my top 5 artists in sequence.
Are you going 5 to 1?
Do you want me to, yeah, is that what you want me to do?
Yeah, go 5 to 1.
Okay, let's go 5 to 1. Number 5 was JP Sax. I discovered JP Sax's music quite late in the year. I heard him cover or perform "Here's Hoping," where John Mayer was playing the guitar.
Yes. What a song.
We
Great
have
song.
we have a great story behind that we can't mention on air.
No, but people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so he covered "Here's Hoping," and I heard that song mainly because John Mayer was playing the guitar on that.
Yeah.
And I liked the song, and I went on Spotify, did a further deep dive,
Yeah.
and I reheard his song that he did with Julia Michaels, "If the World Was Ending."
You'd come over now.
Yeah. So I heard that, and then I went deeper into his album that he released,
Yeah.
Dangerous Levels of Introspection.
What's up with new artists releasing albums that are like mouthfuls? Do you remember what Louis Capaldi's debut album is called?
It's pretty long. That's what I remember.
Something about like and Devin. Do you have your phone? Can you look this up?
Yeah.
Uh, something inspired by an hellish, devilishly inspired by a hellish extent, something like that. And I don't understand what it is with these artists now. They're having these mouthful names, and I mean, I shouldn't be the one complaining because my poetry collections are a mouthful. I'm pretty sure our mom still cannot to this day pronounce like in one go. Say the entire name of my first collection, but
Louis Capaldi's album is called, or was called, Divinely Uninspired to a Hellish Extent.
that's a mouthful.
And there's also an extended version in the brackets.
Yes.
Yeah, but I agree, and I was gonna call you out for that as well because
Don't ever do that again because your number one album was JP Sax's, what was it?
dangerous levels of introspection.
What were the dangerous levels of introspection that you were doing in 2021?
I don't know, but it was a year of reflecting,
Mhm.
and growth and learning. So which is why introspection is something that I do on a daily anyways. So
Really?
these were just dangerous levels of that
Okay,
introspection.
next artist. I'm done with your dad jokes.
Number 4 was the great, one of my friends calls him Bauji, Atif Aslam.
Adida.
I mean, how can you have a top 5 list and not have Atif Aslam?
So for
And-
our Anglo-Saxon viewers out there, Atif Aslam is how would you compare him? Who would you compare Atif Aslam in the Western music sphere? Or is he his own thing still in the Western music sphere?
I still feel like there's nothing quite like Atif.
Yeah, you really cannot compare him.
Yeah, like he was part of a band called Jal, then he went solo, and then he got discovered in Bollywood, and he's never looked
And then
back
he
since.
went into Coke Studio, and then
Yes.
that's a whole other.
But I mean, when I say that Atif Aslam is my number 4th most played artist,
Yeah.
I'm talking about his deep hits. I'm going back into his albums.
Yeah, his
Meri
albums.
Kahani, I'm going back to Duri, and those were just some great albums.
Yeah.
And
When him and his brother were writing songs together, I think that's where the magic was.
yes,
I mean, if we ever get Atif Aslam on the podcast, I'd love for him to go deep into why he doesn't write his own music anymore, and why he doesn't do album stuff anymore, and why he sold his soul to the devil of Bollywood.
he is putting out some singles.
Yeah, but it's all single work. Like,
yes.
there's a whole difference between. Okay, remember when "Carry Me Away," "New Light," and "I Guess I Just Feel Like" came out? John Mayer songs, by the way, for the uninitiated. They were good songs, but they were so scattered and they didn't have really a tone, a feel, a vibe. And then you put them on an album like Sob Rock, and suddenly they have texture, they have context, they have a story behind it, they have a thread going through. That's why albums are so important. And you cannot make a living, you cannot be a sustained artist on singles.
I agree. And as a true core Atif Aslam fan at heart, I would love to see him go back into the studio, write songs with his brother Shehzad Aslam,
Yes,
and put out another album, because that's what the inner me wants to
Yeah,
hear.
and I want like a proper back to the roots album. Like, okay, we've seen you do commercial stuff. You're good at it. Fine. How many Bollywood songs are you gonna sing that are gonna be played at Shadis? Like,
Yeah.
how many?
I think it's also with Atif Aslam. He was such an integral part of our childhood growing up. Like every time that I put on Aankhon Se, I am on the highway in Karachi. We're driving to some water park with our family in the car,
Fiesta, shout out at Kuzi.
and we are shouting on the top of our lungs these songs.
Those were the cassette days.
The cassette days, and
Yeah.
We only had maybe a couple of those
Yeah,
in the car, so
yeah.
it was just they were on repeat. And
Solid.
we used to do like our own Pakistan Idol when the electricity would go out in Pakistan.
Yeah.
One of our cousins would be the
Cringe,
judge, and then we would be like practice singing Bolam Hai.
Oh my
So
lord.
back to the good days. So Atif Aslam was number 4.
Those are your three.
Number 3 was Phineas. I discovered his music as well.
Great pick, man. I like your list.
I discovered his music again in the mid to later part of this year. You did make me hear "Let's Fall in Love for the Night," which was his most popular song.
Yep.
Um,
Great tune.
But I went again deeper into his EP, and then
He was also the first concert back.
he was also the first concert back. Yeah, so we saw him a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Great concert.
Great show.
And then he also released an album at the end of this year. It was, I think, in October. It's called Optimist.
Great album.
Great album. There's
Unskippable.
a few songs that I just cannot skip. They're just unskippable, like you said.
Yeah.
So Phineas was up there. I think he's great.
What was your number 2?
Number 2 was Coldplay.
Oh wow.
Yes.
So we're talking about Coldplay, Music of the Spheres Coldplay, or we're talking about pre Music of the Spheres? Because Music of the Spheres came out like in September, October, right? It's quite at the end.
It did, but I would say I'm still going back to the live albums, to
Oh,
the
true.
Spotify sessions, to
Mhm.
A Rush of Blood to the Head.
Yeah.
Ghost Stories
Yep.
was an album that I played a lot this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, even though Music of the Spheres was quite a disappointing album, Coldplay is still up there for me as my top favorite artist. Chris Martin just has a way of making music that resonates.
100%. 100%. I mean, Coldplay, whatever music they put out from today onwards or henceforth,
Yeah.
their catalog is insane.
I would say a lot of their everyday life stuff has grown on me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I go back and listen to that, and I think I'm seeing this again in the pod, but Sadek, our friend, said that that Everyday Life is possibly their best album musically on a musical level.
Okay.
It's probably their best album, and I think I have to agree to somewhat.
Yeah.
It's not
Sonically, it's probably their most diverse sounding album for
Yeah.
sure, and some interesting sounds in there, and really like it's pleasant to listen to. I'm gonna hold you for your number 1 spot because we have it's quite obvious who isn't on that list yet, but I'm gonna hold you and go to my number 5.
Yeah.
Which was Ed Sheeran.
Okay,
I
really.
had Ed Sheeran. Yeah, Ed Sheeran's new album was so good. Again, talking about albums, right? I listened to that album front and back. I think in a whole day, I'd listen to it like twice at least.
It was good. You expect these things from Ed, and he delivers. He does not miss.
Yeah, I think I personally think this was a better album than Divide.
Okay.
Even though Divide was amazing. Some of Divide was really good. Some of Divide was okay. I still cannot get behind Shape of You. I think that's a horrible song. You can't change my mind. But yeah, the Ed Sheeran album was great. I really liked it. Number 4 for me was Taylor Swift.
Okay.
Right? I mean, she's great. We were talking to Tom Butwin just a few hours ago, and he's not a Taylor Swift fan, and I try to compel him to be, because I feel like Folklore, Evermore, are two of the best, if not the best, albums of the past 10 years.
Right. I think there needs to be some convincing on my end as well, because I like Taylor Swift as an artist.
Yeah.
But I just haven't been able to, like I was talking with Tom, been able to connect with her music on that level.
I get that. That's totally fine. I get that it's not for everyone. Like, I get the naysayers. I get that. But if I would stay here and defend Folklore, Evermore till my dying breath, because I think those 2 albums, those twin albums, those sister albums, are just a piece of amazing art, man. Like, if she never makes an album like that again, I will be happy to put her in my top 5 every year, because those albums are that good. Songwriting wise, storytelling wise, narrative wise, vibe wise. Like, as soon as it hits September, I am putting on Folklore, Evermore.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why Swift is on number 4. Number 3 is Coldplay.
Coldplay, number 3
Right?
for you.
And even like you said, even with not the best album probably coming out this year, their catalog is so strong that I go back and revisit all the time. Like, I have one Coldplay song on my rotation probably every week. Depends on what I'm feeling that week. So it could be a Fix You type song, or it could be a Viva La Vida type song, or it could be a deep cut like something on Prospect March. But it's not a surprise to me that Coldplay is on that list. Number 2 is The Constant, the love of my life, the band that made me fall in love with music, the Goo Goo Dolls. As always,
You're still on that train, eh?
forever, man, forever. It's been a decade, and I think that will come full circle when we finally get Johnny R on the pod. As I'm manifesting it, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. I mean, because you
And-
mentioned the Google Dolls, I just wanted to talk about this one thing. Like, you are pretty comfortable with putting yourself out there on the internet.
Yeah.
You've got pretty thick skin. I think.
What's thick about that skin? Bro?
No, okay. Like, what I'm
What are
trying
you
to say is
no. What are you trying to say?
a part of that is because you were a fan of a band called the Goo Goo Dolls
What's wrong with the
in
name?
Karachi, in Pakistan, and I witnessed you getting a lot of hate for that, a lot of criticism.
Sure. I mean, it doesn't really bother me, man. Like, the music speaks for itself. I remember in grade 7, grade 8, when I was like, oh my God, this band, the Goo Goo Dolls are so great. It's before Something for the Rest of Us came out. And people were like, what the hell is that? Like, it was quite homophobic slurs thrown at me and whatnot. And I was like, whatever, man. Like, I don't care. And literally 2 years later at the school farewell, which is like the prom in Pakistan, in Karachi, guys were trying to tune their guitars to B, D, 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 D and trying to play Iris. And you could
They
tell
were
that
broken strings.
broken string. And I'm like, bro, I know what you're doing wrong. I would love to help you. But remember 2 years ago? Yeah. Sorry.
And I think that all came full circle when you met them.
Yeah. And this signed drumhead behind me is a sign of my love, a testament.
I remember this one guy commented on the picture, Nazar bhai, dreams do come true. You're an inspiration. And I was like, bro, calm down.
I think whoever that was, I would love to see him when Johnny Resnick comes on our podcast and
Manifesting it.
I hope we were very close to having him a few months ago, and then things didn't transpire, and then I'm hoping to have him again pretty soon. So yeah, the Goo Goo Dolls are my number 2, and then my number 1 and your number
Our
1.
number one.
Our number 1 collectively is
John Mayer.
He put out my favorite album of the year, Sob Rock. Coincidentally, but not surprisingly, all of my top 5 songs are Sob Rock songs.
I saw that and I was like, this man really went deep into the album.
I think I'm not kidding. I think I played that album every day since it came out. I'm not kidding. Because it's 38 minutes long, man. It's to and fro the gym, right? Like if I start from my house and go to the gym, that's half the album, and then on the way back it's the other half. Like that's how can I not? It's so easy to listen to. It's so fun. It's so chill. It gives me summer vibes, and then it gives me fall vibes, and now it's winter, and it's giving me winter vibes. It's a great album, and there's not a bad song on that album.
Yes,
which is hard to say about most artists, but there we go.
I relate to that, but at the same time, I think for me it was, and this is like a constant year over year thing where, because we're still recent fans, I still find myself going back into his older albums and finding that new song that I like.
Yeah, totally.
And whether it be Search for Everything or Heavier Things, I go back and I'm like, how did I miss this one? Or I've grown.
So what song? Name a song that was like that for you.
All We Ever Do Is Say Goodbye. And I think you don't like Battle Studies, but it's one of my favorite albums, probably top. No, top
I
2 or
grew
3.
on that song. I didn't like that song in the beginning, but you and some of my friends, 07, was really persistent about it.
All We Ever Do Is Say Goodbye, War of My Life.
Oh yeah,
a couple songs on the Search for Everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Search for Everything grew on me a lot.
Yeah,
like that was an album that was good, but I think it's elevated to like great.
It has.
Yeah, it would be really tough for us to make a top 5 John Mayer albums list because the 5 spot would be the hardest. The 1, 2 probably not, but the 5 would be really hard.
Yeah, and even during the build up towards the Sob Rock release, I found myself listening to his whole discography top to bottom, looking forward to Sob Rock release.
Yeah, totally.
So it was a whole preparation.
Yeah,
and it's been a great year.
How was your top 5 list like?
Top 5 songs list.
Run me through that.
Number 5 was Guman, Young Sinners. I
Hall of Fame
cannot
song.
emphasize how great that song is.
That's your second year for that to be in your top 5, by the way.
It's the second year, and I'm literally I make my dad listen to it. My dad has a master's in Urdu, and he is a huge fan of Urdu poetry.
You didn't tell me.
Huh? Yeah, no, just for the listeners. So our dad, what am I saying? Anyways, I made him listen, and even he appreciated it. Like he didn't say much, but he's like, he gave that dad head nod.
Yeah.
And so that song just has great songwriting. I love the beat that Joke has worked on. Number 4, I Lost a Friend, Phineas. Great song.
Great song.
Number 3 was a weird one. It was from Ali Zafar. Jab Tere Sheher Se. Again, it was a tribute song to an older.
Cancel?
It was an older song. He remade that.
Good song, though.
Number 2 was Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, the live in LA version. I have fell in love with the solo in that song. And
did you listen to this for the first time?
I'm a late bloomer to this one.
Oh, wow.
You were an early adapter, and it took me a while to I think go back and re-listen to that Live in LA album.
Oh, Where the Light is probably my favorite live album of all time.
Right. And I would have to agree with that. And number one, shouldn't matter, but it does. I streamed this song for a total.
Somebody gonna ask him what he's going through? Like 2021 was a tough year for you.
99 plays on that song, man.
Tough year for you, my dude.
We lost something. I still wonder what it was. It shouldn't matter. Shouldn't matter, but it does.
I am dead. Oh my god! Someone get this guy a tissue.
What was your top 5 songs? So you said it was all from the Sob Rock.
It was all Sob Rock. I think number 1 was Last Train Home. Number 2 was All I Want Is to Be With You, Wild Blue, Shouldn't Matter, and Carry Me Away. Yeah,
nice.
Yep. I think All I Want Is to Be With You is a slept on song. I think that's probably my favorite song off the album, just because I'm a huge Springsteen fan as well, and that's John Mayer doing Springsteen, and I cannot appreciate that more. We forgot to ask Tom Butwin this, but we could have gone for like another hour with Tom, man. He was so much fun. But I can't wait for a new John Mayer live album, because imagine an All I Want Is to Be With You live. That's like a deep cut off a really good album that could have like a 7-minute solo.
Yeah.
Again,
the solos, there's just so much room for him to improvise in the live shows. So if he does do that, looking forward to it.
I have a weird one. What's your top 5 podcasts?
My top 5 podcasts.
Just run it off your head.
Off my head. Armchair Expert with
that was number 1?
Number 1.
That was number 1 for me too. I think Armchair Expert is just not top of our list, but top of the game on podcasts.
Yes.
Like there used to be a time where Joe Rogan was really good, and he still is pretty good, but the thing that Dax Shepard and Monica are doing over there, that's insanely good.
They have phenomenal guests, and
they have phenomenal conversational skills. Like when I'm listening to them, I'm learning as a podcaster how to initiate a conversation, how to move from one area to another area. And they talk about really tough things. Like some of their conversations are really dark, but they navigate it so well. And I think it's because of Dax's self-depreciating quality and Monica's chill vibe that people are really comfortable in talking about that. So I look up to them. They're really good.
I agree. I also listen to the Rich Roll podcast.
Good one.
He has some great guests, and again, I think he also has great interview skills.
Yeah.
That he uses. The School of Greatness.
Nice. A lot of productivity, stoicism, positivity podcasts.
Speaking of stoicism, the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday.
Podcast, yeah.
I love him as an author. Also, his consistency, his work ethic,
insane, man. It's insane.
It's insane. So
the longer we do this thing, the more we understand how important work ethic is.
Yes.
Like that's just how we're gonna persevere, man. That's just how we're gonna succeed in something as dubious as podcasting. But
yeah, I think it's less of a like motivating yourself, but it's more of being self-disciplined.
Yeah. Do you think we're getting better at it though? Past couple of weeks,
I think we are, but again,
there's a long way to go.
There is a lot of resistance to be fighting.
All right, Stephen Pressfield, what's your 4th favorite podcast? Let's go.
My 4th favorite podcast was Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
Oh, great!
Yes,
that's a good one.
Yes,
he's a really good podcaster too.
Yeah,
but are we surprised?
You know what? The more that I think of my top 5 podcasts and just podcasts in general, like my number 5th was Smartless, but I go back and listen to these podcasts not because of the guests that they have, but it's because I'm a fan of the host. I'm a fan of how they conduct the podcast.
Yeah,
and I think that's 100%. Kind of the model that we're looking to achieve here as well.
Yeah,
where we want listeners to, I guess, be interested in what we're talking about.
Yeah,
and I guess what we talk about, like cricket, movies, music, would just be a form of them being entertained.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do here on Vaguely Familiar is just try to create a group so we could talk about anything we want and you'd be interested. So that's the kind of vibe that we're going for. And you're right. It's curious to see that. It's curious to notice that all of the podcasts that we listen to and that we go back to have something to do with the guests that come on, but have a lot more to do with the host. Like one of my top 5 podcasts was the Ali Abdallah Deep Dive podcast.
Yes.
And firstly, that's a great podcast. Like he's a great podcaster because everything that he's interested in, I'm interested in. So he asks what I'm thinking. and he has really interesting and entertaining guests as well, and you learn something from it. Um, I have Smartless on my top five as well. I have Conan on my top five as well. Same reasons. Conan, I think, is like, I think he's gotten better. Like, he was a great late night talk show host, and then he became a podcaster, and now he's a great podcaster.
I love his humor.
He's so funny.
He's so funny, and I love like he has these characters inbuilt within the podcast, like
Yeah.
his assistant Sona.
Yeah. Love Sona
And
too.
whoever the producer is, he always
his
gets a
name.
lot of smack. So it's just hilarious. I love listening to it, and
And obviously, he's such a big personality, celebrity in Hollywood that he gets guests like Bruce Springsteen, and he'll
Danny
get like
Radcliffe.
Danny Radcliffe and Obama, and like all these huge, amazing, interesting personalities. He'll get them on the podcast, and then he
Yeah.
makes fun of them, and then makes fun of us himself. It's just a delight.
I was also gonna give an honorable mention to Smartless, also
Good
a phenomenal podcast.
Very good
Um,
podcast. Very funny podcast. Again, the dynamic between the three, the self-deprecating banter. It's just, I love it.
Yeah.
It's lovely to see.
Closing thoughts. I would say this has been a great year for albums. I think with Adele dropping, John
Mm.
Mayer dropping, Ed Sheeran dropping,
yeah. Swift dropping,
Taylor Swift
Yeah.
dropping. So it's
Coldplay dropping.
Coldplay,
Drop the ball on that one, bro.
um, Phineas, JP Sack. So all of these artists dropping new music albums. It's been a great year,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to see what the next year's rap is going to be like.
I agree with you, and I hope to discover some new artists as well. I discovered Gregory Alan Stravosky. I think I'm thinking his name wrong. Great folk singer. You know, and stuff like that. Like, I would love to hear more Lumineers on my playlist as well, and hoping that next year is as energetic as this one was with music, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys for sticking around. If you want to like, subscribe, leave a comment, we would really appreciate that. Let us know what your Spotify rap was. We're always in the comments, so if you leave something there, we will definitely get back to you on that. And we'll see you on the other side, man.
Yeah, take care. Cheers.
Nazar out. Cheers.